Look, if you look at the economics of just Dubai as a city, I mean, the expectation is that by 2040, the population size will double to
Double,
5.6 million, right?
Don't know what the roads are going to be like then, but
Absolutely. But there's work going on
Yeah.
infrastructure, there's work going on all ways. But yeah, it's chaos already, and it will probably continue to be like that for a long time because the population growth is always there. So there creates a supply demand situation, right? Where you have a lot of demand coming through. Fortunately for us, post COVID, where the prices started going up in the real estate market, there's been a flurry of developers.
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. 2024, big year ahead. The one favor I would ask, if you can, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast today. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast. I'm Conor McHugh, the founder of Alchemy Search, which is the only finance and tax recruitment specialist in the UAE. And today I'm joined by Adnan Raja. Adnan is a well-travelled chartered accountant. Adnan's professional journey has led him to live and work in various vibrant cities, such as London, Johannesburg, and New York. He has called Dubai his home since 2015. Adnan is currently the Group CFO at Select Group, a prominent real estate developer. Adnan has also served as the CFO for the Middle East and Africa at Clyde & Co., the largest international law firm in the region. Having trained for his ACA at BDO UK, Adnan spent the next 13 years at Marsh McLennan, a Fortune 500 financial services firm. So Adnan, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much. Very well indeed. Nice to be here.
Thanks, great. Conor. Great to have you here. So look, we're going to crack on with the questions now. And the first one I actually find very interesting around your sort of profile, in this market for, senior professionals in particular. It's very, very hard to pivot into different industries. As you know, you've worked in insurance, consulting, law, and real estate now. How is that? Tell us about that. How has that been?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. So that's an interesting question, because every career journey is unique, and it's a combination of just hard work, good fortune in some cases, luck, and having a strong network of people who believe in you.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have worked with bosses who really trusted you and pushed you to that next level. So what changed for me was my move to South Africa, where it all kind of started propelling for me. And that was something that my boss pushed me to go to a different region, a different country, and just expedite my professional growth, because being a small fish in a large pond like the UK, it was really difficult to kind of compete with everything, excel and do things that he was potentially doing, but at a much larger scale. So plying your trade at a much smaller organization, it was the same company, but just a different country, different region, went there. And that was exciting for me.
Because anyone that's been listening to our podcast recently, I keep bringing up the point for CFOs that the one common trend I've seen with CFOs that I've spoken on this podcast, from all different nationalities, all different backgrounds, is before they get to UAE, they've worked in different countries. And obviously you took that risk, and I guess went to Johannesburg and, put yourself outside your comfort zone, different culture, different people, different way of doing work. And I guess, as I'm sure you'll tell us, that it excelled you in your career.
Absolutely. So I think that's what led me to come to Dubai then, because once I felt like I've achieved what I was meant to do in Johannesburg, fix some of the issues that we had there, I made way for succession, and then moved to Dubai, where there was a opportunity to actually take on a much larger region and a much larger role with the same organization, but just moving around. And having that mobility is fantastic. And I wasn't married at the time, so I was able to be a bit more mobile. And as a result, I've kind of found myself moving and growing within the existing organization. So I started looking after insurance at first, then it was more consulting. And I think what then happened was there's an overlap between consulting and law to some extent. I mean, it's still the finance function works very similarly as professional services. So that move was not that challenging, but leaving a firm where you've been 13 years and you've literally qualified and started to
Boy and man and boy.
exactly. So that change was not something I was looking for. I was actually through contacts introduced, headhunted for this role,
Yeah.
and I took the plunge, made the decision, moved forward, and 2 years later, one of the contacts within the organization actually introduced me to the CEO of the current organization that I'm at.
Yeah.
And having met him a couple of times socially,
Network.
6 months later resulted in a text message saying, "Where are you? Come see me."
Yeah.
We met,
And that was that.
ended up in a job offer and moved to real estate. And the thought process behind moving to real estate was, well, you're in Dubai, you don't say no to real estate.
Especially now,
right? So it just opened up a brand new industry for me, and I think it's a gutsy, risky move. I felt like, but you should never let that hold you back. You should have faith and trust in your abilities to.
So I guess the big thing taken from that then is that, for senior professionals listening to the podcast, that network is so key. Unfortunately, for us, the business, we get so many senior guys looking for jobs, and I'd be a very, very, very wealthy man if we placed them all. But the reality is, network is so important, because the reality is, before a job gets to a headhunter, they'll have tried to fill it directly. Why pay a crazy big fee if you know the person and you can get them in? So I think that's definitely key for us. And then just rewinding a bit back then, to the move from UK to South Africa in a big organization, for someone who's mid-level now, maybe an FC, FM, wants to get to FD, CFO level, were you seen within the organization? Because I imagine you were sent to South Africa to do a bit of a fixing job within that. Is it to upskill the processes, the team? But was that a case you were asked and you just said, yes, I'm going to go, and then we'll worry about what it is later? Or were you perceived in the business as that sort of up and coming fixer talent?
Yeah, so I was lucky to be in an organization that actually had a leadership development program. So I was selected as one of the 4 people within a 6,000 strong finance function to be part of a leadership program. So that gave me a lot of airtime with the executives, the global CFOs, CEOs, decision makers in New York. So I spent 6 months in New York.
Okay, so you're, again, this guy's visibility in the organization is excellent.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I was very well known within the circles. So when an issue arose in Africa and they needed someone to go there,
send them down.
Yeah, my name came up because I was there. I was hungry. They knew that he would be a good person to just ply his trade.
Get it done.
And when my boss was trying to explain to me the role, he said, well, whatever you do, you can't make it worse. That gave me a lot of comfort. That gave me a lot of impetus to say, okay, if I can only improve the situation there, then might as well give it a try. And I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, the culture, the people, the food, it was just amazing. I mean, I fell in love with safari. I used to be alone, so I used to drive up 4 hours to the Kruger National Park and go do a safari every second, third weekend. So those kind of things which you not only grow professionally, but also as a person, as a human being. This year I took my kids to a safari for the first time because I was like, well, your dad loves it. Come on, let's go. They hated it.
Dad wants to go and do it again.
They hated it, but I still enjoyed it, and it was great.
Perfect. And look, Adnan, having worked in consulting and legal, we're in a market here, you as a CFO, always probably looking to upskill or get the right talent. There's a massive oversupply of talent here, but how do you go about finding the right talent, in this market?
Yeah, I think the oversupply of talent point is quite important, because that doesn't necessarily mean that talent has the skills that an employer requires. So when you talk about skills shortages, it's not the shortage of people, it's the shortage of skills that people have. So there's a mismatch between the expectation of the employer versus what the employees or what the talent can bring to you. And I think that's where the challenge comes in, and that's where the competitive nature of the market drives you to be very competitive for the top talent. So top talent will move, will get better offers, will
Yeah.
get poached very quickly.
Yeah.
So the decision-making process needs to be quite robust. The hiring process needs to be good. You
Yeah.
need to be selling something that's unique, work-life balance,
Yeah.
working for an organization that looks after its employees, gives you the flexibility to work from home, things like that, support for family, good health insurance, all that sort of stuff
Yeah.
is important. And only then can you get
The best
in the
talent.
big market
Yeah.
the best talent.
Yeah, because
Best talent that-
we're seeing that massively now with, a lot of the sort of mid-level staff coming into the region, where they're obviously coming maybe from Europe, where staff welfare or care is probably a lot better to an extent, from hybrid working and, other benefits, where we are now seeing candidates turn down offers because there isn't flexibility. We had one candidate the other day that, it said hybrid model or not, and then unfortunately, they've taken a job elsewhere that has that. And I think that's the big challenge that this part of the world is now seeing, that we have to evolve. It's gone are the days maybe 10, 15 years ago where, people came out, got a big expat package. That was the norm. We go to work 9 to 5, 6, Monday to Friday, and we don't ask questions. We just get paid. Well, now I think it is changing quite a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think another point I'd like to add there is that, especially professional services, your accountants, your actuaries, your lawyers, your consultants, etc. I mean, it's a lot of hard work to get to a qualified position where you can call yourself an accountant or call yourself a lawyer or call yourself an actuary. And I think that ethics, that hard work that's required up front before you start getting the rewards of that hard work is where I see the future generation being challenged. I mean, it's a TikTok generation, it's an iPad generation. The ethics, the work required to actually qualify and get to those positions where you can call yourself a lawyer or call yourself an accountant is going to be a big ask for them. I mean, you've got post-COVID, you've got mental health issues, people not coping with a lot of stress. And I remember when I was qualifying, I mean, there was
Stress,
a ton of stress, and you were working till from 8 in the morning till 7 at night, coming home and studying. I mean, that is going to be a struggle for the next generation. And as a result, that will result in a bigger undersupply of
those
good talent.
Hardened talent, I guess. Because I think, look, the reality from, our generation is that, of course, we went through a lot of stress at sometimes, even exams, but there wasn't a social media platform to have your sort of whinge or moan or whatever you like. And the reality is we've come, it's just constant negativity, and people think it's not the cool thing to do, but they just think, okay, we can do this. And then it builds up this sort of a momentum that is actually fine to just complain about everything.
Yeah. And just not put that effort in. I think that's where you'll see a lot of challenge coming in with the pipeline of the future generation.
It's entitlement.
You'll struggle to get good lawyers, good accountants, good actuaries. And you're seeing that in the industry already, that there's not enough good applicants for trainee positions because no one wants to train.
Yeah, but I think everyone wants the quick win. If you try to sell it to a lawyer or an accountant, do your 3 years degree, then do your whatever accountancy qualification for another 3 or 4 years, and then you'll be a qualified accountant, or a lawyer is probably a little bit longer even. But yeah, I think it's the big challenge. Like, we see it so much with a lot of entitlement, sometimes from certain candidates, where even when you get to offer stage, they're asking for things without having done a single hour of work for the new business. Where again, when I was growing up, or not that I'm too old, but there was definitely an expectation where come in, prove yourself, then you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
Well, now from what we see is that it's like, no, well, I want this now, then I'll come in and work.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's going to pan out. And then just pushing back onto the talent, because you've been in the market for quite a few years, and I'm sure you've been through hundreds of interviews with candidates. What for you stands out for a good candidate? Like, what is that you leave the meeting room saying, okay, wow, I actually like that person?
Well, it's that ability to connect with that person. I think for me, the most important thing that I look from a candidate is their ability to change, the ability to move on with times and grow. If you haven't worked in a fast change environment, then working in an organization where I operate, I don't think that would be the right candidate. So everyone that I hire, I look for a pro change, lots of enthusiasm, lots of initiative, and not be scared to make bold decisions and move forward. Yes, we'll make mistakes. Yes, some things are not going to work, some things are going to work, but that doesn't mean you stop evolving, you stop changing. It's a market where there's a lot of automation, lots of AI, lots of stuff that you can still do to make your processes, your systems, your technology more robust, more automated. And that's the direction of travel. So when I look for candidates, especially at kind of people reporting into me, I look for change leaders.
Yeah, and then on your management style, because I know a few people have reported into you and all been very positive feedback, but what I find with a lot of senior guys is that they're super calm, because obviously you being the leader within any business you're into, I guess it all trickles down, but has that been something that you've always been quite calm, or has it taken you years to not chill out a bit, but be conscious that it's very important how you are perceived?
So when I was doing my A-levels, we were taught 4 styles of leadership, right? Autocratic, democratic, paternalistic, and laissez-faire, right? And I always, from that time, thought I want to be a paternalistic leader, right? I want to be a leader that supports the team, that actually is a fatherly figure to the team. And most of the time, people reporting into me have been older than me, but that hasn't stopped me from becoming a fatherly figure to them. And if they fall out of line, there's repercussions, consequences, like a father would do. But if they're doing well, there's a well done, a thank you, a present at the end of it, not necessarily in physical terms, but maybe half a day off or a lunch or a coffee or something that you get treated to. So that's been my style. And what I've tried to do with my team, especially my direct reports, is if there's pressure coming, you explain to them what the timelines are, what the requirements are, but never actually let them feel the pressure. So they work with absolute calmness and understanding that, okay, there is a deadline, but they're not seeing what the repercussions or the challenges of missing their deadline would be. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with some cracking, fantastic people who've helped support, deliver the deadlines, the regulatory deadlines, the audit deadlines, the reporting financials, etc., on time, every month. Because in our role, it's all about consistency, right? If you're meeting your deadline one month, missing it the next month, then your stakeholders start losing patience. They start losing faith in you, and that's not good for a CFO, right? And for the team, it trickles down all the way through. So being consistent, making sure that your team's happy, and if you have a happy team, if you have a team that looks up to you and knows that you've got their back, they would always support you no matter what you ask them to do.
Okay, perfect, Adam. Well, look, obviously working with Select Group, massive real estate developer, we've seen the last 2 or 3 years the flock of real estate agents into the market, and people keep the thing that's what I see now is everyone's buying, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. And for anyone who hasn't bought, they're sort of saying, well, is the bubble going to burst, or is there going to be a correction, or what's going to happen? So be quite keen, as someone who's in the trenches of that sector, to give us your view.
Yeah, I mean, it's $1 million question. I wish I had a crystal ball to answer that. But it's one of the frequently asked questions that I get from anywhere I go. And look, if you look at the economics of just Dubai as a city, I mean, the expectation is that by 2040, the population size will double to 5.6 million, right?
Don't know what the roads are going to be like then, but...
Absolutely. But there's work going on infrastructure, there's work going on all ways. But yeah, it's chaos already, and it will probably continue to be like that for a long time, because the population growth is always there. So there creates a supply-demand situation, right? Where you have a lot of demand coming through. Fortunately for us, post-COVID, where the prices started going up in the real estate market, there's been a flurry of developers and a flurry of projects that were launched, all the way from low-end to your mid-stage to your ultra luxury products, right? Which we have a few of as well ourselves. So from that perspective, over the next 2 to 3 years, the supply is expected to meet the demand that's coming through. Now, what's going to be interesting is if the population and if the empty properties that exist within the market, if that will react negatively towards the
Prices or
pricing and the influx of new properties, new developments that are coming through. So I feel like there will be a correction, right? But the correction will happen probably this time next year. That's where the bulk of the inventory is going to come in, right? And as a result of that influx, there will probably be an adjustment downwards of rent, of sale prices, etc. But for a common man, for the listeners, it will happen and it will be back on the rise before we even realize.
Okay.
Right? Because you need to be in the industry to know when to time the market. And it's really difficult for a common person who's not in the industry to actually understand when to time it. You might think, okay, it's crashing. Next thing you know, it's back up again and you've missed it, right? So there's no better time than now to buy it. I think there's always going to be cyclical movements in the market. The buy market will continue to go up and down. But if you aim to buy with a view of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you will be a winner. But if you aim for the next 3 to 4 years and want to cash out and go, then you have to time the market. And as I said, that's tough.
Yeah. And, I know post-COVID, villas, all that was the sort of boom area. But, what's happening now in the market? Is it a mixture of, all the off-plan apartments in luxury areas, or what's the demand really at the moment are you seeing?
I think so the demand at this point in time has been triggered by what's happening around the world, around us, the Russia situation, where there was a lot of influx of cash that came into the country and invested in real estate. And that meant a lot of off-plan properties were sold to a lot of Russian buyers, a lot of buyers from Eastern Europe side as well. And that has created a lot of demand for off-plan products because for off-plan, you don't pay everything up front. You pay 20 to 40% depending on who the developer is. And then you pay the rest at the back end so you can deploy your cash. And you can make a good profit out of selling it off-plan to someone else after a certain period of time. So I think that's triggered a lot of the demand. Now with that situation over, there is events happening around Europe. There's events happening in Lebanon, as we know. All the situations will potentially make UAE a more attractive place for people to come in, set up shop, invest, buy, and relocate their families too, because you've got the safety, you've got all other aspects to it. So it's still a mixture. I think families still prefer villas. Because you've got low service charges, you've got it's all within your control, but it depends on personal preference. To be honest, we're seeing people paying silly money for ultra luxury apartments with nice views.
CFO is happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But then we've got people who really want to move into a villa because they want that villa lifestyle.
Yeah, because it's interesting because I remember when I came here 7 years ago, and back then Dubai was sort of a spent force by the sounds of it. People were like, why have you come here? People are leaving, senior guys were losing jobs. It was a very different market. And I remember I was playing golf with a real estate guy actually, and, his view was very quick. He said, if you look around the neighboring countries, there's so much conflict, so much wars, that anyone with money or, wants to escape, they will probably come to somewhere like here where it is, incredibly safe. And I guess, unfortunately, with the events happening very close to us, that's probably going to be of UAE's benefit. So yeah, I guess he was right, and I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, but it is true now when you see it happen.
We have a situation with the UK where they're talking about the capital gains tax increase.
39%? No,
39%, right? I mean, if I've got the money and if I'm in the UK and I'm making acquisitions, taking all the risk and then
kills entrepreneurs.
39% of that goes to taxes. Right. I would rather move to a jurisdiction that has 9% tax and has a very well-oiled machine in terms of regulation, in terms of the legality. You can set up in the DIFC, ADGM, in free zones, outside of free zone, and you can work with professionals that are readily available to come in and support your business. So we'll see some of that influx from Europe, UK as well to Dubai, where you're already seeing
Yeah, well, I think for our British listeners, because we get approached by so many that want to come here, and the reality is, without being here, it is so tricky because in the UK the notice period is 3 months, pretty much across the board, from newly qualified to CFO. For us, the business, the majority of our work is newly qualified to mid-level, while those guys that are working in those roles here are usually on a month's notice. So the guys in London or wherever it is, they're on 3. The reality is the talent is here. Obviously, it's our job to uncover them, but that is the reality.
Yeah.
Book your one-way flight. Okay, Adnan, and what makes Dubai and the UAE a secure place to invest in real estate? Because this will be the big question for people trying to come into the region, and probably no better man to give a credible answer on this. So,
yeah, look. Post the 2009 crash, where we saw a lot of developers, contractors go under, you still see some after effects of some of those projects that were shelved at the time, still lingering on.
Yeah, I still see, yeah.
Yep. And there has been a lot of change in the regulation as a result of that crisis. And lots of good work and good regulations have been put in place now by the Land Department and the regulatory authorities, the government, where the main change, the main big security that the investors are now getting is that when they buy an off-plan product, for example, they put their money in an escrow account.
Yeah.
That escrow is well managed and overseen by the banks. So you cannot just go out and draw money out on the back of some construction that you're doing. You have to demonstrate your ability to deliver that. You have to call upon the escrow balances to be used, and there's calculations, formulas, requirements that you have to satisfy before you can start utilizing client money to do a development.
Okay.
Right? Furthermore, you then have to put in corporate finances or a bank guarantee, etc., with the Land Department to demonstrate that you have the ability to complete a project.
Okay.
Right? That could be somewhere between 20% to 50% of the cost that you require to complete a project. You have to put in a deposit with the Land Department as contingency in case you can't complete the project. So that gives the buyers the confidence that, okay, if I'm putting in my money, it's not going to just be utilized wherever.
Yeah.
And there's good governance, good checks and balances around the utilization of that cash. And then the developers then have to comply with all these regulations, and only then are they able to utilize customers' money towards the construction and development costs. So that's a big battle every day that I face with the Land Department, with my team, with the contractors, to say I need to be able to demonstrate the ability to utilize these funds. And then other Emirates have also followed the lead that Dubai has had and the success that they've had with this introduction of change.
Yeah.
And even places like the UK have started doing a bit of this with off-plan developments. We've been one of the first developer in the UK to actually use escrow balances. Never been done before, so it's a first for the UK.
And so, yeah, I think the key thing there is governance, and that's probably something that this part of the world has been associated with probably not having. So I guess, yeah, so reassuring that in 5, 10 years time, 20 years time, we won't see any deserted buildings, hopefully, on the motorways.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of other work as well that's been done by the General Department of Economy, Ministry of Economy, the growth that has happened. I mean, the Expo has been a big boost, and that made Dubai a very interesting, exciting place. You see the whole Expo City being developed. You see Dubai
airport,
South being developed. All of that area, which shows that there's safety, there's security, there's a thought process behind why all of this is happening. And it's not just being done in a haphazard way. I mean, if you look at the design of the overall Dubai, everything's pre-planned, everything's signed off by so many authorities, your Diva connections to your water supply, to your Empower supply, to your road and transport authority. How many trips can a road handle? Does it have the infrastructure to support that? Then developers are being asked to put in schools, put in hospitals, put in infrastructure.
There's plenty of schools anyway.
Absolutely. So it's well thought through. So that makes it a lot more compelling proposition for anyone foreign or even local. People have been living in rents for 10, 20 years, right? everyone's now thinking of buying,
Buying, yeah.
and everyone's now, and that's what makes it a safe, secure investment.
Yeah.
Because when your local population wants to buy, then that means they want to call it home.
And that's the big change. As I said, when I go back 6-7 years ago, no one was buying. I don't know anyone, even in my, well, no one in my friendship circle, but even, you know, senior guys that I catch up with, all renting. And just because they said they were unsure with the stability and I guess the volatility of the market. So yeah, I guess it's reassuring for the population that are here now that it's positive. Yeah. Look, Adnan, thank you so much for coming in today. I think especially the information around the real estate is really, really interesting for the listeners. So we're just going to end on a lighter note. So if you could live in any city in the world, where would it be?
So my top city would be Sydney.
Yeah.
Absolutely love Sydney. The vibe there, the downtown there is fantastic. And I think a close second would be Toronto. I've loved Toronto.
Very different, yeah.
Although I would hate the cold there.
Yeah.
But you live in tunnels, you walk in tunnels all the time. So I think that's the least appealing part. But Toronto is beautiful and I like Toronto. But I think Sydney would be
Sydney, yeah.
my
I know you like your cricket as well, so probably the Aussie lifestyle, the cricket would be...
Absolutely. It's a very outdoorsy lifestyle.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're on the beach, which you can't do six months of the year here.
Yeah, well, for Irish people, probably 8 months, but...
but in Australia, there's a lot of sporting activities. Yeah. Like going to the gym is not considered an activity.
Yeah,
like you have to go ride a bike, you have to go do some sport to be considered, I've done something. If you go to the gym, people laugh at you.
Yeah, and I guess if you weren't a CFO and you took a different path, you know, what would you have been? Professional cricket player, or what would you have liked to have been?
Yes, potentially, although I've never actually been that good at cricket. But yeah, I think I was 16 when my mom asked me, what do I want to be? She, as any Asian parent would be, she wanted me to be a doctor. And I hated biology and I hated physics. And that was something I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So she said, look, if you're not going to be a doctor, you've got a week to decide what you're going to be. And I want you to commit to
a lawyer and accountant, I guess.
So I spoke to my neighbor at the time and said, I need some ideas. I'm lost here. I just don't want to be a doctor. So tell me what. So he suggested some ideas and accounting just struck. And I didn't know anything about accounting, but I just thought it's a way out from being a medic.
Yeah.
And here I am.
You've done pretty well.
Still go to my mom and I say, look, I committed to you. I delivered. Here I am. So I'm quite pleased. So I don't think I chose the life that I'm living now. And I'm very blessed and very pleased to be here.
Good. Well, look, Adnan, thank you so much for coming in today. It's been a very insightful episode. And, thank you to everyone who's listened. Please subscribe to our podcast and look forward to the next episode. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. All the best.
Cheers, Adnan.